It
You
should
ready?
it should notify you when it's coming up whenever.
There it goes. The recording has started. So, yes, let's go ahead. This is the Doctor of Digital podcast. My special guest today is Graham Sawrey. He is from Pixel True. And there are a lot of things I'd love to get him on the show for. I hope he tells you a little bit about his background and what have you. He's a business owner, an online entrepreneur. He has global team members, and that's a globalized world we're living in today. So that's really important. And I got to mention, because one of us does voiceover as well, he's got a daughter who does voiceover. Isn't that amazing? That is really great. A lot of principles. That's what we want to hear about, too. A person who is ethical and has the principles that he lives his business by. So, with that as an introduction, this is the podcast that is for CEOs and business leaders who want to grow their business and revenue using social audio. And if you listen to the end of the program, also got a free complimentary offer for you as well. So, stick around. So, with that, Graham, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you
Glad you're
so
here.
much for having me. It's great to be here. It's yeah, nice little introduction. Yeah, I keep busy for sure. Daughter, especially doing the voiceovers, etc. That is something that's grown into something entirely on its own in terms of a time management thing. So, anyways, we do what we do for our kids, etc.
You got that right. Yes, I've got a novel that's coming out in about 3 weeks called "Burning America." So it has to do with family. So I understand that. Yes, kids are
Okay.
a challenge, but yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Hopefully, like investing or something like that, it pays off down the road.
Well, kids, it's the most challenging, but it's also the most rewarding thing. That's what I would say. It's challenging, but rewarding. There's nothing better in life than having a child, and
Yeah.
they don't come with an instruction manual. Each one is
No,
different.
that's that is the toughest part about things is that you don't necessarily know, like many other things, if investing or
Hmm.
and whatever it is, like you feel as though, yes, something will happen, there will be a positive result at the end of things. But
Right.
with kids, it doesn't necessarily guarantee a positive outcome. And so you're doing all these things. You feel like a mad scientist sometimes, trying different theories, but you don't know whether it's going to work or not. It's an odd experiment. So
Yep. There's not quite the business plan. That's what you're saying for a
there is
child.
not, no, it's, I mean, you have the right sort of, yeah, general concepts, but you don't
Hmm.
necessarily know what external force something might roll around and just derail some type of person down the road. Or you don't know what type of life experiences are going to change things. That you can do as much as the good things you want, but anyways, I'm getting hypothetical here, so
Well, we'll see how it turns out, and we'll be praying for you and wish you
yeah,
the
thank
best
you.
of luck because you do
Yeah,
what you can.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your background. How is it you got started in doing what you do, and what's the story? Because it is kind of a unique story of how you've been able to create this business.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like any businesses or things like that, nothing is ever an easy shot, and just getting to where you are. There are very few people out there that know what they want to do, and do that since they were, 7 years old. Okay, I want to be a doctor, and I'm going to be a
Yep.
doctor, and I'm going to go to the
Hmm.
school and whatever
Hmm.
it is. That was my original thought. Actually, is I was planning on going into medicine. I went to university for we're up in Canada, so I guess something as close to pre-med as you would consider. Realized that I didn't like school that much, and so figured doing more
Yeah.
education and getting in the medical field probably not the best idea when you don't want to keep learning, at least in that capacity. Actually, I do very much enjoy learning. And then moved into finance world. Um, Always been, fairly good with money and things like that. So I may as well give that a try. Was
Sure.
doing that for a while. Ended up being a fund manager for one of the largest mortgage funds here in Canada, and I was doing that for a while, but just working. All getting home, working, feeling the need to do that, and I just didn't enjoy it. That side of things, sort of not
Right.
working for myself, being beholden to someone else all the time, not really being in control of my own destiny to a degree. And I always had an idea that I wanted to be a business owner. I just didn't know what. And so a year before I quit, actually, I bought my first website, and started playing with that during that time, and fell in love with it. And so a year or so later, I decided to quit and get into the website ownership side of things. So um, fast forward to now, I own about 15 content websites out there. And then a little over a year ago, an opportunity came up to buy a design business called Pixel True. And so over the past year or so, we've been building, as I said, pixeltrue.com into something that's a lot bigger and better than what it was. So it's been a fun road overall. Hiring people, building that out, and getting hopefully, getting the chart up and up and up. And
Sure.
nothing is ever with a business, nothing is ever constant growth. There are always challenges and things like that. So we went through quite a few as well.
Right. And when you've done this, now that you've really started and gotten going, could you say something about some of the biggest changes that you've seen in your business and in your experience?
Mm-hmm. From the website side of things, Google, the constant battle between Google and a website, that has every 3 or so months, Google constantly changes their algorithm in order to try and ideally, from their perspective, serve the best answer to the query that someone is searching for. And so every 3 months or so, it's sort of like Google releases this update, and for some reason, maybe some of your website, or if you just have one website, all of a sudden you get a huge amount of traffic, or the opposite can happen. I guess three things: nothing can happen, a whole lot of positive change, or a whole lot of negative change. And I think relating to the affiliate content, so a lot of websites out there do review type content of what the best podcast mic is, for instance. And before, you could write something quick, as long as you have reasonable authority in your website, and get some traffic. Google will place you high up. Well, that's gone now. Google's working on trying to really make sure that the person that says that this is the best podcast mic, as an example, actually has true experience on that. They show that they have actually purchased the product and have tried it for a long time. They show some pitfalls. They explain a whole bunch of things. So and that's just talking about the affiliate side of things, but just from a business owner's perspective, the content side of things is a real challenge overall. Writing just 1 or 2 blog posts on your website for your business doesn't really do it anymore. Unfortunately, you need to have a lot more content, a lot more tests out there, feelers, sort of back to that child side of things, sort of do the right things, and then just keep testing the fields, which is one of the reasons why I've been doing content for so long, that we're also launching a copywriting business as well, just to try and help business owners on that side of things, because it's sort of like a poop on the wall theory, I think, is the best way that I would sort of I call it something else. I'm not sure whether you swear on this podcast or not, but exchange poop for something else on the wall theory. That's what I call it. It's sort of like testing out a whole bunch of different articles, see what actually works, what sticks on the wall, and then sort of build out from there. It's a real challenge, ultimately. You need to really spend and devote a lot of time towards it.
Are there things that you could identify? What would be some of the hot growth areas, and what could you say, what would a person and should a person or a company do now currently? So how would they grow, in other words?
Yeah, I mean, from the copy business, I guess there is the one of the hot growth things that's talked about is something called topical authority, and essentially proving to everything is largely trying to prove to Google something,
Mm-hmm.
and so proving to Google that you know what it is that you're talking about. And so how do you prove to a bot? Google is not a human necessarily. There are humans behind it, but ultimately it's an algorithm that you are trying to um, win over, I guess. And one of the things to do that is topical authority. And what that means is writing a whole bunch of content about one particular type of thing, back to the podcast mic, rather than just writing an article on the best podcast mic. You will write about everything relating to the podcast mic. What's the best recording software for podcasts, and what is a cardioid filter, and all, I don't know, I don't know a whole bunch about podcast mic, but just writing generally all about that particular content and going from there. Relating to ultimately on the design side, I think gone are the days of simple, blocky websites. I think as the website online presence become more and more mature, people are looking for something a little bit more of a wow factor. If there are businesses out there that are trying to cater to customers themselves, or just B2B, B2C, etc., they're looking for something more, rather than just sort of a standard website with some copy on there and click here, etc. They're looking for something to wow them and catch their attention a little bit, and draw their eye to a particular thing. And I think that's a huge overall thing. I think another part, frankly, is a lot of businesses are starting to outsource even more. Since COVID has come around, I think people are getting more and more familiar and used to doing things online, and video chatting, and not necessarily needing to a design agency, for example. I think it's progressing more and more to feeling that, yeah, I could just go online and talk to someone there, and work back and forth, rather than needing to walk down to a brick and mortar design agency and talk to someone there. The global landscape has changed significantly in that world. The design agency as well, big growth areas, NFTs, whether you've heard of that before, that is an absolute explosion in terms of companies trying to get into that. Unbelievable amount of different companies that are deciding that they should launch their own type of NFT. You can design specific type of contracts relating to that. And so from our design agency side, we're seeing a huge amount of influx of people looking to create some type of design for NFTs specifically. And there's a whole bunch of creativity that people can do around that, not just designing something, but actually attaching a neat contract to it, to grow that out, to help their business ultimately. So that is a massive area that I think business owners should be looking at, frankly, because it's not just a design thing. As I said, the NFT landscape, you can do a lot of creative things to it, and it's something that my business partner is really into that, and knows he can talk for hours, I'm sure, about that sort of stuff. But I've learned more and more about that. And then the last thing, I think, from a company perspective, outside of design and copy and things like that, just for someone in general, is being the business owner or the CEO. Often, they're, depending on the size of businesses, etc. Being the CEO or the business owner, I'll use them interchangeably, because I feel like most people are sort of in that the business owner is the CEO type landscape. So I'll talk to them specifically. it's a big job. The CEO is meant to be more the visionary in my mind, and someone is in that world. And so I think I remember reading this somewhere else a long time ago, where the CEO's job should be more visionary, and that's it. To do a whole bunch of other things, to be a visionary and implementer and a whole bunch of other sort of hats, it's really going to put a damper on your overall business growth. And so what you need to have is a CEO who's a visionary, and then another person who is purely an implementer, we'll call it, right? Someone that can take the ideas. So you have someone that's, call it the dreamer or visionary, whatever it is all they're focused on is trying to think of cool, creative ideas, whatever it is, to be able to grow the business and work forward. And then you need someone who is equally talented to be able to take those ideas and actually do something with it, because everyone can come up with an idea, right? There are millions of ideas getting thought of every day. A lot of them are probably billion-dollar businesses, really. But many of them don't go anywhere because there's not that secondary person or entity that is able to take those ideas and actually run with it. Okay, great. Yes, let's start doing that. They don't necessarily have to be the ones that are doing it, but at least the ones that are controlling it and making sure that it moves forward. So they don't have to worry about the vision, right? So it's a yin and yang thing, right? The visionary person is just focused purely on, okay, what can we do to make the business better? What can we do to make the business better, et cetera? And that's their focus. And then the other person's focus is not at all on how do we make the business better. It's on how can I take these visions and run with them and make those the best that they can be in terms of implementation. And I think that is a huge component for people out there that would really skyrocket their business that much more. And it's something that I've really taken to stride as well for myself. That's sort of what I see is my role in trying to really just be the visionary of things and not necessarily be the best. When I started, I wouldn't consider myself to be a designer at all, but bought a design business, saw a lot of growth there. And Pixel True has really grown since we bought it. I think we've tripled our customer retention rate and our revenue and all these things because we test, iterate, and grow from there. So that's another big thing too. Is one of the things that I've always talked about before is doing something because you've done it before is not necessarily a reason for continuing to do it. You know, I think that you get into that complacency zone where it's like, well, this is, I ask all my staff or whoever it is, why is it that you're doing what you're doing right now? And if the answer is because that's the way it's always been done, don't even say it, right? Yeah. Just there's something wrong with that. What can we do differently? Not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a wrong way of doing it, but test something different. And if it doesn't work, then we'll go back to the other thing. Just do little constant tests to constantly try and improve and change, et cetera. And I think that's a huge component of an overall business mindset, is to try and push the envelope, drive as much value as possible to your customers, get as much efficiency as possible within your staff, et cetera, is just work on that. And that's what we try and do at the design agency, ultimately, is really try and focus on that and deliver as much value as possible.
And since you've laid it out this way, you've kind of given the environment and scoped it out. What would you then say would you recommend for business owners that consider both in the design field or what you do? So what should the average business owner be thinking about based on your perspective and laying out the environment you have?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of pitched the twofold side of things. On the copy side, the organic traffic side, I think getting going and getting writing, getting some blog posts out there. I know I sort of bash writing 2 or 3 blog posts are sort of gone. And if you're really trying to get some traction, you need to do more content. But Google also favors long-standing articles, as in aged articles. And so the time to start anything is now. If you only have time to be able to write 1 or 2 articles, it's better to write 1 or 2 articles than 0 articles. And then going back after a year or 2 and constantly updating those as well. Google again favors something, that's been around for a long time rather than new kid on the block. It's like you sort of proven yourself. Ad costs are getting more and more expensive. We've seen, whether anyone's ever talked about Facebook and the changes there, with Apple coming in and changing their overall ad tracking, Facebook advertisement has really taken a big hit. And so having more of an organic content platform overall, it really serves you down the road. It's very much like investing. If you start socking a little bit away over time, you end up with pretty big overall piggy bank or whatever it is. Same thing with content, and do that. From the design side of things, I think competitor research, not necessarily just design, but just business perspective, and I will relate it to the design side a little bit, is looking at your competitors and really taking the time to understand what it is that you like. I'll frame it in the landscape of coming to us for design work. The people that get the most benefit from our services are ones that have taken the time to look at the competitors, their websites, what is it they like, what is it they don't like, the specific elements, that maybe color choices, and you don't have to be a designer necessarily to know what you like and don't like. And you can see what other people are doing. And taking clips of different things that you like and don't like and things like that, and doing a lot of the pre-work before you go to a design agency or even thinking about designing the website yourself, etc. Doing that work up front is huge. Then broadening out and looking at other industries as well, other websites. What type of elements do you like about these? What about this type of font? And just marking all those things down. And so if you do want to go to an agency or a designer or something else, you have all of that pre-work done to be able to give to them. And it really helps the designer drive home what it is that you ultimately want. Because if you don't have that pre-work done, it's a really tough slog from a design agency or any type of service, right? I mean, it's you have a house cleaner coming in and you say, yeah, you have 2 hours, okay, clean my house, right? And then they come back, you're like, well, you didn't spend any time cleaning the bathroom. Like, well, you didn't tell me to clean the bathroom specifically and do all that, right? Like, do as much pre-work as possible to give us accurate instructions, and that should go with almost anything. Finding someone, back to that visionary landscape, is finding someone who is actually committed to asking questions and understanding your vision. So back to the design thing specifically as well. Someone that is proactive and back and forth potentially. Like there are people out there that will maybe take your pre-work, right? And then they'll start designing something, and it might be something entirely different than what you constructed. So you also need a back and forth relationship too, someone that's actually willing to ask questions, try and clarify what it is that you're saying, and go from there. And then lastly, I think starting with a reputable company to begin with. Upwork is certainly a powerful website out there, Fiverr too, I suppose, where you can find, again, design aspects, I suppose. But if you're not a designer yourself, how do you know how good a design person actually is? They can say it, but unless they're able to really showcase all the different case studies that they've worked on and things like that, how do you really know? I know for us at pixeltrue.com, we actually have a money back guarantee as well. So, we try and we put our money where our mouth is, et cetera, right? So if you're able to come to us and hire us after a couple weeks, if you're not satisfied, we'll give you your money back. Ideally, we ask for you to do some pre-work ahead of time, right? So we're able to make the most out of someone's time and energy, et cetera. Because, people are trusting us with their money to be able to come up with something. And so we really want to make sure we're driving as much value as possible. And so the way to do that is getting that pre-work done.
Mm-hmm. Well, then you're kind of leading into a question here, like what types of expertise do you have to assist a business, and what kinds of things, if they were thinking about engaging with you, can you offer, and what do you do for businesses?
Yeah, we have, I don't know how, probably thousands of projects completed at this point in time, and we don't have a huge price point, I think, relative to a lot of the high-end agencies. I shouldn't say design agencies. We're certainly not the least expensive, but we're not the most expensive either. But I'm always a proponent of trying to offer as much value as possible. And so I think for our price point, our designs and the value that we drive is way more than what you see elsewhere. I think just my overall personality. I'm a frugal person by nature, so I want to see in the dollar that I spend, do I get more than sort of a dollar back in my perceived value? And I believe that we're doing that ultimately. That's a big thing. From the copy business side of things, I think the value that we offer is just our expertise. I never want to say I'm an SEO type person, but ultimately, when you run that many different websites, you inevitably are essentially that type of person. And even with the copy side, the design side, we implement a lot of websites designs as well. And what a lot of business owners end up getting from our implementation side is that I will do a lot of the proper sort of framework of setup just in the background for people, just as sort of a value add to a degree, just because I know how important it is to have this and this and this and all these sort of minor little things that are hugely important that nobody really, if they don't know, it's important to have it. So that's another thing that we will do to a degree on the back end as well when we develop these designs and implement them on the websites. Is we'll implement that too.
Mm-hmm. So you have talked about a number of things that you do and the way that you do it, which is good. So as we kind of wind down the interview and get to the end, of course, then if people know what it is that you do and how you do it, then of course, big question is, how do they get a hold of you, and what would you recommend to engage with you and your company?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. For me personally, I don't have a huge social media presence. So if someone's trying to reach to me specifically, the best way is frankly just going to the design website pixeltrue.com. And there's a contact us area there. We offer specific meeting request if someone wants to chat about the project specifically. You can book there. Happily to spend as much time trying to pre-work and do things to be able to understand the vision and aspect. And then ultimately going through that, if someone wants to reach out and talk to me specifically and have a bit of advice, I'm happy to do that too. Best thing again is through that contact us page, and asking for Graham specifically, and I'll get back to them. Eventually, I have many different emails coming in, etc. But I will, if someone comes and talks to me from the Doctor of Digital podcast, then I'm happy to happy to answer.
That sounds awesome. Graham, I want to thank you very much for your time and all the insights and all the things that you have, the valuable field that you're in, and also how resourceful you are and able to get all these things together. And hopefully you listen to the end of the podcast episode, because I said we got a free complimentary offer. Anybody who's listening who's got to this point, you get a free complimentary website versus your competitors. Is something that Graham also brought up. You want to know what the other folks are doing. So thank you very much for being the podcast guest to this episode. Until next time, Deus Vult.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.